economy. But the reality is, do any of you believe most of the Republican candidates will do what it takes to reverse this trend? There is someone among them who sees that there could be a recovery on the horizon. He's a man whose diagnosis for the economy involves a heavy dose of fiscal conservatism and a prescription of limited government that other Republican candidates are afraid to offer. He held a congressional hearing today, and I hope Fed Chair Ben Bernanke was listening.
For those of us who believe in less government is better than more government, whether it's warfare or welfare, we see that the Federal Reserve has a strong influence in allowing our government to grow.
And allowing our government to grow. Texas Republican Congressman Ron Paul is here. Welcome back to Freedom Watch, Congressman Paul. Do you think Ben Bernanke was listening to you? Or do you think he just wants the government, as he said, to keep spending money that he'll just keep printing for them?
Well, I'm sure he wasn't listening. He was over on another committee testifying that we need more printing press money and lower interest rates. I don't know how much lower. They're negative rates right now. So, no, they're not offering a prescription. I mean, we have too much spending and too much debt, so they're trying to solve the problem with more spending and more debt. So there's not a chance in the world that we can get out of the recession this way, because it's going to take a long time to get rid of the debt and the malinvestment at the rate we're going.
What will it take for members of Congress to understand that the policies of the president and the congressional leaders and both parties who've gone along with him and of Mr. Bernanke is not going to solve the problem of everyday Americans? It's only going to make it worse. You know it. You've been discussing this for years. What will it take for the rest of the people in the government to realize you can't do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result?
Well, I'm not too optimistic that they're going to catch on, because when you think about how long it took us to come out of the Depression of the 1930s, it was a long time. When you think about people learning our lesson in Japan, they've been going up on almost 20 years. We're now, I think we've been in a slump since the year 2000, not just in the last 4 years. And the people here don't want to change because they have been conditioned by Keynesian economics. But where I'm encouraged is that people outside of this place are getting the message. And the answers are well known. It's just that how do you translate this new message that we have of free markets and the Constitution and get the people that are managing the affairs now out of office? And I believe we're going in the right direction, but we still have a long way to go because, you know, the deficit is continuing to expand and the government is expanding and they're still printing the money. So they haven't changed their policy. But I keep plugging away, and we are reaching a lot more people, even previously, but especially in this campaign. We're reaching a lot of people now that know there are answers out there, and they're not that complex. It's just a stronger conviction of and belief in freedom and understanding how the market works.
What are the answers? What would a President Paul do if the Congress were to be of like mind to address our economic recession in the first couple of months of your presidency?
Well, immediately you could bring our troops home and have them spend all their money here at home. That would give us some reprieve. We could change our foreign policy and indicate to the world that we're going to get our budget under control. We could remove taxation on all the money that is held overseas by our corporations and not double tax them. We could remove the interest paid by the Federal Reserve to the banks. The banks won't, invest their money because it's too risky. But the Federal Reserve gives them their money essentially for free, and then they invest it back in the Treasury bill, so they help monetize the debt too, along with the direct monetization of the Federal Reserve. So those are a few things, but sending a signal will be most important. We're going to quit this spending. Right now I'm working on a plan where even in 1 year I want to cut $1 trillion, because this year's budget is the only budget that counts. This tinkering around and say, we're going to cut 5 years, 10 years out on the proposed increases, the American people see through this, and that's why their confidence has not been restored. So they have to have somebody that will stand up and say, this is what we have to do, and we shouldn't suffer for it. Because if I return freedom to the individual and the right to keep what they earn and give them incentive, why should that be a sacrifice? They should feel better by getting the government off their backs and out of their wallets.
We have a tax system that is so complex it's hard to find a human being that has read every regulation from the first to the last, much less who understands all of them. What would you do to alter or hopefully to simplify the method by which the federal government taxes people in this country?
Well, in general, I support any tax reform that would reduce taxes and reduce the power of the IRS. But I do not like the idea that we have to replace taxes. I want to get rid of the income tax, but I don't want to replace it with anything. I worry a bit about those who want to cut down on the income tax but give us a sales tax. I think that would be very bad policy.
What would the federal government do in order to fund what it does? I know the government would be seriously shrunk if you had your way. But let's say that the foreign wars ended and the federal government didn't involve itself with education or housing and urban development or commerce, and those matters were left to the free market or to the states. How would you fund the federal government?
Well, you would defund the federal government. You know, if you look at just getting rid of the income tax now, I think the revenues would still be like they were less than 10 years ago, 8 years ago or so. You'd still have the same revenues. And we lived up until 1913 without an income tax. So it's the appetite for big government is the problem. The taxes and the Federal Reserve inflating, that is the symptom. And the budget problem is a symptom of the appetite for big government. So we have to convince enough people, and this is where we're making progress. The majority, large majority now, the American people say enough is enough in Afghanistan. Let's come home, and we can save a lot of money. The other side of the coin, though, is the entitlement system. And I'm sure you understand this because people have come to believe that an entitlement is a right. That has to be reversed. You have a right to your life and your liberty and your property, but you don't have a right to somebody else's life, and that's what entitlements are about. We have to change that definition or we can't win.
How dangerous is it, Congressman Paul, for a president to act as judge, jury, and executioner and order the killing of an American because in the president's view he's dangerous and has to go? And is not in the United States, and might this dastardly event lead to killing Americans who are in the United States?
Of course, that's the big danger. I've been mulling this over, and I think it might be our crossing of the Rubicon. I believe we have just transitioned, if we don't quickly reverse this, transition from what's left of our republic to the dictatorship or the tyranny that came, to the Roman Empire. So we are losing our republic, and republicans are gone when the government takes over the monopoly of control of money and they print their own money or create their own money. They do it when they expand themselves too far overseas, and then when they attack the civil liberties and people don't have justice in court. So whether it's the assassination of the American people or searching houses and taking goods and things from people without search warrants and treating us like criminals at the airport, I would say we're awfully close. But once again, I have to look on the positive side. And going around the country, I still do meet a lot of people who are getting pretty upset with this and would like to see the restoration of our republic.
Are there members of Congress from both parties who agree with you? I know Congressman Kucinich, who doesn't often agree with you, agrees with you on these issues. The president can't start a war in his own. The president can't kill an American. Everybody's entitled to due process. Is the Congress a potted plant, or are they going to do something about this?
Well, and too often the leadership is only in the business of preserving power. And that's what they argue about. It's a shame that all this arguing and bickering going on between the two parties, that there was a difference, but regardless of which party you have, they still endorse. They don't change the definition to rights and entitlements, and they don't change the foreign policy, and they don't go after the Fed. But we have a dozen or two. There are several young members of Congress, and you've had several of them on your program that are willing to look at this. So we're making inroads. But I think as problems get worse, there's going to be a greater need. I think that's one reason why we've gotten attention, at least the last few years, is out of necessity. The wars are going badly. The economy's in shambles. They better pay attention to some alternatives to what we're getting.
Time for a game changer. Congressman Paul, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.
The Congressman Ron Paul.